A small farmer in the Opava region in the northeast of Czechia made a unique discovery while working in a field, unearthing a golden belt dating back to the Bronze Age. The ornamented piece, which is exceptionally well preserved, should go on display at the Bruntal Museum at the end of next year. The golden belt had been lying underground for thousands of years before being unearthed by a farmer while he was harvesting beetroots. The founder, who wishes to remain in anonymity, discovered the ancient piece of apparel at the end of September and immediately contacted archaeologists from the Silesian Museum in Opava. Yuri Juchalka, head of the museum's archaeology department, says that as soon as he saw a photo of the item, he knew it was something exceptional. The first hypothesis was that the thin golden sheet of metal, which is around 50 centimeters long, was a tiara. However, after examining the object in greater detail, experts now believe it was actually part of a belt. It is decorated with raised concentric circles and topped with rose-shaped clasps at the ends. We realized that it was too long to fit on someone's head. So we actually think it is not a tiara, but something much rarer, a part of a belt. Belts at the time were made of leather and this was strapped to its front part. It was crumpled when the finder found it, probably as a result of agricultural activity, so it is a miracle it has been so well preserved. It may be missing a few tiny parts, but otherwise it is in perfect condition. The thin metal sheet is made mostly of gold, along with some silver and traces of copper and iron. A preliminary analysis places its origin around 14th century BC, says Teresa Alex Kilnarova, conservator at the Museum of Bruntal. It is estimated to be from the Middle to the Late Bronze Age, but it is only a preliminary determination based on the decoration. Similar decorative ornaments appear in more than one prehistoric cultures and therefore a more detailed research and analysis of the metal is needed. It probably belonged to someone in a high position in society, because items of such value were rarely produced at the time. That's why we are talking about someone more esteemed. While the monetary value of the belt is yet to be determined, it is already clear that the object has an incalculable cultural and historical value, says Ms. Kilnarova. Such objects are rarely found even during excavations, so it is a really unique discovery, not only in our region, but all over Czechia. I think it is safe to say that it will be one of the most valuable objects that we'll have on display in our museum. The rare item, which will become part of the Museum of Bruntal collections, will now be thoroughly examined and conserved, before going on display for the public.
Hello and welcome to Blast World Mysteries. Please subscribe. Italian authorities on Tuesday announced the extraordinary discovery of more than 2,000-year-old bronze statues in an ancient Tuscan thermal spring, and said the find will rewrite history about the transition from the Etruscan civilization to the Roman Empire. The discovery, in the San Cascino dei Bagni archaeological dig near Siena, is one of the most significant ever in the Mediterranean, and certainly the most important since the 1972 underwater discovery of the famed Rias bronze warriors, said Massimo Asana, the Culture Ministry's director of museums. Thanks to the mud that protected them, the figurines were found in a perfect state of conservation. Alongside the figures were 5,000 coins in gold, silver and bronze, the ministry said. As evidence of the importance of the find, the ministry announced the construction of a new museum in the area to house the antiquities. Jacopo Tabali, who coordinated the dig for the University for Foreigners in Siena, said the discovery was significant because it sheds new light on the end of the Etruscan civilization and the expansion of the Roman Empire between the 2nd and 1st centuries BC. The period was marked by wars and conflicts across what is today's Tuscany, Umbria and Lazio regions, and yet, the bronze statues show evidence that Etruscan and Roman families prayed together to deities in the sacred sanctuary of the thermal springs. The statues bear both Etruscan and Latin inscriptions. While there were social and civil wars being fought outside the sanctuary, inside the sanctuary, the great elite Etruscan and Roman families prayed together in a context of peace, surrounded by conflict, Tabali said. This possibility to rewrite the relationship and dialectic between the Etruscan and Romans is an exceptional opportunity. Some of the 24 bronzes are entire figures of humans or gods, while others are of individual body parts and organs, which would have been offered up to the gods for intervention for medical cures via the thermal waters, the ministry said in a statement.
Archaeologists from the Austrian Academy of Sciences have uncovered an early Byzantine business and gastronomy district at ancient Ephesus, located in the Izmir province of Turkey. Ephesus was built in the 10th century BC on the site of the former Arzawan capital by Attic and Ionian Greek colonists. During the Classical Greek era, it was one of 12 cities that were members of the Ionian League, emerging as a major urban center with monumental buildings that included the Library of Celsus and a theater capable of holding 24,000 spectators. The city was also famous as a sacred place for pilgrims visiting the nearby Temple of Artemis, which has been designated one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Ephesus, as part of the Kingdom of Pergamon, became a subject of the Roman Republic in 129 BC after the revolt of Eumenes III was suppressed. During the 1st century BC, the city entered an era of prosperity under Roman rule, becoming both the seat of the governor and a major center of commerce. According to the Greek philosopher and historian, Strabo, it was second in importance and size only to Rome. During recent excavations, archaeologists have discovered an early Byzantine business and gastronomy district on Domitian Square, a prominent public place directly adjacent to the political center of the Roman city, the Upper Agora. Byzantine shops and workshops were built over a large Roman square complex, with the team focusing excavations on a structure consisting of several business premises that covers an area of around 170 square meters. Individual rooms are preserved up to 3.4 meters high, containing thousands of pieces of ceramics, including whole bowls with the remains of seafood such as cockles or oysters, as well as amphorae filled with salted mackerel. Also found were stones from peaches, almonds and olives, and also charred peas and legumes. The team also uncovered 4 gold coins, solidi, in addition to over 700 copper coins. Archaeologists suggest that the excavated rooms functioned as a cookshop, a storeroom, a workshop, a taberna, and a shop for lamps and pilgrim souvenirs, indicated by the discovery of around 600 small pilgrim bottles that were sold to Christian pilgrims. The destruction layer is likely the result of conflict, with several arrowheads and spearheads also being excavated that the team links to the Byzantine-Sasanian War of AD 602 to 628, a series of wars fought between the Byzantine Empire and the Sasanian Empire of Iran that left both empires crippled. Swedish maritime archaeologists have discovered the long-lost sister vessel of the 17th century warship Vasa, which sank on its maiden voyage, the Swedish Museum of Wrecks has said. Launched in 1629, Applet, the Apple, was built by the same shipbuilder as the famed 69-meter Vasa, which is now on display in Stockholm after being salvaged in the 1960s. Our pulses raced when we saw how similar the wreck was to Vasa, said Jim Hansen, maritime archaeologist at the museum. The huge shipwreck was discovered in December 2021 in a strait off the island of Vaxholm just outside the capital, Stockholm, according to the museum. Mr. Hansen said the construction and the dimensions seemed very familiar to them, sparking hope it could be one of Vasa's sister ships. While parts of the ship's sides had fallen off, the hull was preserved up to the lower gun deck, and the parts that had fallen off showed gun ports on 2 levels. A more thorough survey of the wreck was carried out in the spring of 2022. Which revealed ship details that had previously only been seen on the Vasa. The museum said technical details as well as measurements and wood samples confirmed that it was indeed Applet, Vasa's sister ship. In 2019, the same museum reported the discovery of 2 other warships in the same area. Archaeologists at the time believed that one of them could have been Applet, but further investigations showed that those vessels instead were 2 medium-sized warships from 1648 named Apollo and Maria. With Applet, we can add another key piece of the puzzle in the development of Swedish shipbuilding, Mr. Hansen said, adding that this enabled researchers to study the differences between Applet and Vasa. This will help us understand how the large warships evolved, from the unstable Vasa to seaworthy behemoths that could control the Baltic Sea, a decisive factor in Sweden's emergence as a great power in the 1600s, Patrick Hoagland, another maritime archaeologist at the museum, said. Named after one of Sweden's kings, Vasa was originally meant to serve as a symbol of Sweden's military might but instead capsized after sailing just over 1,000 meters. It was salvaged in 1961 and is currently on display at the Vasa Museum in Stockholm, one of Sweden's most popular tourist spots. According to the museum, the designer of both ships, Hein Jacobsen, realized that Vasa's proportions could lead to instability even before she was launched and therefore built Applet wider than her ill-fated sister. In late 1658 the ship was no longer deemed seaworthy and was sunk the following year at Vaxholm. Two other ships were also ordered from the same shipwright, Kronen, the Crown, and Scepter, and like Applet they also served in the Swedish Navy and participated in naval battles. The ships are believed to have been sunk on purpose after they were decommissioned. Researchers from the National Institute of Anthropology and History, INAH, and the Bajo Labyrinto Archaeological Project have conducted a LiDAR survey of the Maya archaeological zone of Calakmul, revealing the extent of urban expansion that lies beneath the jungle canopy. Calakmul is located deep in the jungles of the Greater Petén Basin region in the Mexican state of Campeche. The city was the capital of what has been named the Kingdom of the Snake, indicated by the extensive distribution of a snakehead glyphs known as Khan. Throughout the Classic period, Calakmul maintained an intense rivalry with the major polity of Tikal to the south. At its height in the late Classic period, it is estimated that the city had a population of 50,000 inhabitants and covered an area of over 70 square kilometers. INA researchers, working in collaboration with the National Center for Airborne Laser Mapping at the University of Houston, Texas, and the Aerotecnologia Digital SA de CV, conducted an aerial LiDAR survey over an area of 95 square kilometers within the Calakmul Biosphere Reserve. Light detection and ranging, LiDAR, is a method of remote sensing using light in the form of a pulse laser to measure ranges, variable distances, to the Earth. The differences in the laser return times and measuring the wavelengths can be used to compile a 3D digital map of the landscape, removing obscuring features such as tree canopies that could hide archaeological features. The results revealed the dense urban sprawl and residential apartment complexes, consisting of 60 individual structures grouped around temples, sanctuaries, and possible plazas or markets used for trade and commerce. The density of structures and construction works to support the city inhabitants, suggests that around AD 700, Calakmul was one of the largest cities in the Americas. Reporting on the survey, an INAH representative told reporters during a broadcast on INA TV the magnitude of the landscape modification may have equaled the scale of the urban population, since all the available land was covered with canals, terraces, walls and dams, to provide maximum food security and sufficient water for the inhabitants of the city. An ancient Roman bust from around the 1st century that had been missing for decades has finally made its way into the San Antonio Museum of Art, and all it took was for one artist to buy it from a Texas Goodwill for under $40. In 2018, art collector Laura Young was shopping at a Goodwill store in Austin, Texas when she stumbled upon a sculpture on the floor beneath a table, according to the San Antonio Museum of Art. Someone that looks for undervalued or rare art pieces, Young told the art newspaper she bought the piece for $34.99, and a picture of it after she bought it shows it buckled up in her car with a price tag on its cheek. After buying the bust, Young noticed it looked very old and worn, so she wanted to find out when and where it came from. Over the next couple of years, Young consulted with experts in art history at the University of Texas at Austin and those at auction houses across the United States looking for answers. Eventually, Jörg Ditterling, a consultant for the fine arts brokerage Sotheby's, identified the bust as a piece that was once in a German museum decades ago, and connected her with German authorities. Turns out, the sculpture is from late 1st century BC to early 1st century AD. The museum believes it depicts a son of Pompey the Great, who was defeated in civil war by Julius Caesar, while the art newspaper reported the bust is believed to depict Roman commander Drusus Germanicus. The bust had belonged to King Ludwig I of Bavaria, who lived from 1786 to 1868, and was part of a full-scale model he built of a house from Pompeii, called the Pompajanum, in Aschaffenburg, Germany. The model stood for nearly 200 years, but during World War II, it was severely damaged by Allied bombers. No one is quite sure of how the bust went from being nearly destroyed to the Austin Goodwill. As part of an agreement with Bavarian administration of state-owned palaces, gardens, and lakes, the Roman bust will be on display at the San Antonio Museum of Art from now until May 21, 2023. Afterwards, it will finally return to Germany. Young said she was excited to discover the bust's origins, but added it was bittersweet since she couldn't keep or sell it. Either way, I'm glad I got to be a small part of its long and complicated history, and he looked great in the house while I had him, she said. Underwater archaeologists from the Soprintendenza del Mare Region Siciliana, RPM Nautical Foundation, and the Society for the Documentation of Submerged Sites, SDSS, has recovered 2 more bronze warship rams at the site of the Battle of the Egadi Islands, a pivotal naval engagement during the First Punic War that led to the victory of Rome over Carthage. The Battle of the Egadi Islands, also called the Battle of the Egates, was a naval battle fought on the March 10, 241 BC off the western coast of the island of Sicily. Ancient authors recount the size and scale of the battle, which saw hundreds of ships ramming each other as the Carthaginian forces sought to break through the Roman line in order to reach and resupply the Carthaginian army on mainland Sicily. The Romans enjoyed far greater mobility, since their vessels were carrying only the bare necessities, while the Carthaginians were burdened with the equipment necessary for sustained travel and provisions for the Sicilian garrisons. Following the Roman victory, Carthage signed the Treaty of Lutatius, in which Carthage surrendered Sicily to Rome and paid substantial reparations. Ongoing underwater surveys of the battle site has been conducted from the Hercules research vessel using an autonomous underwater vehicle, AUV, to map the seafloor, and a remotely operated vehicle, ROV, to inspect submerged targets. The survey area spans 270 square kilometers with the main battle concentration spreading over 12 square kilometers. During the 2021 survey season, the researchers had sought to delineate the site to the north and east, when they discovered 2 more bronze warship rams along with 4 from earlier in the season, bringing the total discovered from antiquity up to 25, in addition to dozens of lead slinger bullets used as lethal projectiles in combat, several bronze helmets and cheek pieces, and Roman and Hellenistic Greek coins. In the same area, the survey identified an extremely large merchant shipwreck transporting amphorae produced in Lusitania, modern Portugal, and Baetica, Spain, dating to the first half of the 4th century AD. The director of the Soprintendenza del Mare, the government agency that oversees underwater cultural heritage in Sicily, Valeria Livigni said, together with the results of previous years, the discoveries made this summer further reveal the picture of this ancient naval battle, which to date is by far the best documented from an archaeological point of view.